If you want an unsullied Armored Core 6 experience, walk away right now. I'm showing the tutorial, a minor boss and a big boss from Chapter 1. Come back after Christmas, I'll be waiting. There's a sound I hear from time to time in the gamer jungle. Get good. What is that, get good? It is the not-so-rare call of the skill-obsessed gamer, scientifically known as the From Softwarius Sapien, used as a catch-all rebuttal when you critique their favorite game and trigger their defense mechanism. The From Softwarius Sapien signals to all within a 50-foot radius that any attempts at communication will be met with a personal attack aimed at your own mastery of the game. Any problems you have with the game are a reflection of your lack of skill and lack of understanding. The game is never the problem, you are the problem. I like a challenge, and I'd say I'm quite good at video games in spite of the dexterity-impairing microchip that was installed in my brain when I became a games journo, so I'll bite. How good must one get before criticism becomes valid? Are there diminishing returns and a point where one gets too good and their criticism is no longer applicable to the average player? When I first played Armored Core 6, I nearly fainted from how sluggish and janky the controls felt. I failed my first attempt to get on the tutorial platform designated for teaching you how to gain elevation. Oh no. Everyone was going to make fun of me like that Cuphead guy that couldn't get through the tutorial. It doesn't matter if he was a hardware reviewer, the internet never forgets to misremember. I tried mouse and keyboard and I wasn't really feeling it. I tried controller and I was really feeling the carpal tunnel then, even though I was primarily raised as a console kiddie, go figure. I settled on mouse and keyboard and committed to learning the controls. I completed the tutorial perhaps 5 times before moving on to the main missions. It wasn't so much an obsession with getting good as it was a desire to get comfortable. I learned enough from culinary and sports that the first thing you need to do is get your stance and form down. Progress will follow. So yeah, to a certain extent you do need to get good before judging a game. But here's the kicker, none of my opinions about the design for the tutorial changed after I mastered it. There's too many unexplained mechanics that you learn in the actual training mode, which you unlock after you progress this story. I know it's a Japanese studio and you're supposed to read manga from right to left, but I don't think the player fending for themselves first and then being taught helps the accessibility. That's what it is, poor accessibility. And the From Softwarius Sapiens encourage it, chanting their new favorite phrase, get filtered. Getting filtered is a phrase used to denote the point where a player quits. It's similar to get good in that it frames all of the failings on the player. It's not that the tutorial does a poor job of teaching you how to play the game, putting bots in front of you and telling you to shoot them while downplaying the importance of mastering mobility. It's that you weren't good enough, so you quit. You are the impurities in the water being removed by the game's Brita filter, leaving only the purest of gamers. I did get good enough and I didn't like it. That is also my fault. Of course you got sick of it, Frost, you played it too much. Honestly, you sound deranged. Who obsesses this much over a tutorial? Fine, I'll let that go. I continued playing and the game started to hit a pattern. It alternated incredibly simple missions where you fly from one area to another while beating up Robo Bros, and also simple missions, but this time it was just a boss fight. I was using the mech you get from the start and I hadn't customized a single nut or bolt. If I thought it was simple and straightforward, I can't imagine what the game felt like to someone who indulged in their Neon Evangelion self-insert fanfic. There was some crazy builds floating around on the internet completely trivializing Baltius, the boss I had set my eyes on. Word on the street was he was the game's first real filter that separated the hardcore gamers from the casuals. He was the reason my mech remained untouched and uncustomized. I was saving myself for him. Also worth noting, this was before the patch that nerfed him and made him easier. Our battle was legendary. Baltius is without a doubt one of my favorite boss fights of all time. And the reason why is because it holds up at all skill levels. Your first time fighting him when you have no idea what's about to hit you, it's like driving through a freak lightning storm. The missiles are streaming out in every direction. He moves around the entire arena with mobility you haven't seen before. You aren't obliterated. You're undone. I couldn't ask for better funeral music. Even as you're figuring him out, he never loses his elegance. He makes you use the entire arena and all the buttons and motions in your arsenal. This isn't one of those boss fights where you lock on and spin around in circles until one of you spanks the other's exposed derriere. It was a majestic dance, and with each attempt I was getting further into the score until it came down to a few hits left on both of our health bars. But I didn't want it to end. I powered off and let him kill me. I went again. I experimented with different openers and timings while I improved my overall driving. I didn't leave when I won. I left when I had my fill, and it was well after the first time I beat him. Baltius was more than just an obstacle to overcome, another box in the checklist to mark off and say, yeah, I beat him. He gave legitimacy to Armored Core. This is what makes fans. I can't say that for the rest of the game. The levels stayed simple and the other bosses were more tedious and one-dimensional. Clearly, the focus of the game was to customize your mech to overcome the problems that arose, but the only problems that ever made me consider breaking my vow of mech celibacy was the ever-increasing amount of armor or my lack thereof. The bosses didn't get more interesting, they just got tankier, and I was painstakingly aware of it at all stages of the Get Good graph. But I was also aware that at this point in the game, my skill level had overshot the average demographic. How many people have made it this far, let alone without upgrading their starting character? It's not that my points of criticism are invalid, it's that they're not relevant to a vast majority of players anymore. That's the problem with using skill as a barrier for criticism, it isn't linear. If anything, it's a horseshoe that peaks as you start breaching competence. The low ends would be on either side where you don't know anything of what's going on, or you know too much to the point where you can see the cracks in the walls everyone else would be passing by. Personally, I don't care about gamers pretending they're in search of the Goldilocks skilled reviewer, who is just good enough to overcome shoddy introductions but not too skilled to lay into their favorite game. It's just another goalpost people like to move around if your kicks are getting too close to the truth. Once again, no one ever tells you to get good if you tell them you love the game beforehand. What I do want to do is get the conversation rolling around games that are intended to be a little more difficult than the average. I'd call this a microwave take, because it's cold all around with a hot gooey center. But I think a lot of difficult games as of late are piling on the difficulty and dismissing genuine design problems. I, a man of the Latino influence, love the spice. But when the spicy became the trend, I know his companies kept pumping up the Scovilles on all kinds of food. Chips, wings, candy, burgers, all of it kept getting hotter, but the flavor took a backseat. No more complimentary flavors like chili limon, mango habanero, or sweet tajin. We went ghost peppers, scorpion peppers, and then just to extract to appeal to the spice heads. Likewise, developers kicked up the heat with no regards to amusement. Yeah, throwing me into a small room surrounded by 100 bots is hard. Yes, making me run to the spot I died with less resources adds a challenge. But where's your flavor? Where's the map design that complements the heat? Difficulty itself is not fun, and you don't have to get too good at video games to recognize when it ain't enjoyable. I pick on From Software fans because they are by far the most notable and timely. The Get Good gamers pop up anytime there's criticism of any game or genre that has notable difficulty. Examples being games like Cuphead, Blasphemous, or almost any roguelike. Someone having a problem with the game doesn't mean they weren't good at it. My being good at a game doesn't mean I can't be wrong either, and I'm okay with that. Good games shine regardless of a player's skill, and the way Baltius was exemplary at all stages of my burying him with the starting punch buggy. I didn't even have a left shoulder weapon, for crying out loud. If you think you need to get good to get a video game, you need to get a grip.